Welcome back, guys. I'm Zell, and today we're looking at the Benchmade Griptilian 550HG. And here we have the Griptilian 550HG. I've had this knife for quite a while, and it's been abused and used, and man, they are just built for it. You know, we have a closed length of 4.64 inches, so it's not a little bitty knife. And a handle material that's glass-filled nylon. Everybody likes to complain about that, but, you know, that's alright. And it is not flow-through. It's fully enclosed back here. You can get a flow-through model if you want to pay the extra money for the CPM 20CV steel in the blade and the G10 handles. But the basic model is not. And we have our standard Benchmade pocket clip. Now, it is a standard 3-screw design, so there are, I don't know, at least 2 other Benchmade pocket clips that will fit on here. The waterfall style and the split arrow style. And whenever we get a close look at it, it's called a Griptilian for a reason. We have this texture here. We have some texture up here, and we have some texture back here. Flip it over, and we have a little bit of jimping here and a little bit of jimping here. This thing is meant to grip and stay in your hand. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Alright, whenever we flick this guy open, we get our sheep's foot hollow ground blade. It's not a terribly high hollow grind. It's up, about halfway up. But it does get reasonably thin behind the edge. As you can see, my 15 or 17 degree sharpening job there is pretty thin, so it does get really thin behind the edge, and it does a good job at slicing. You know, it does a better job than it really should for how short this hollow grind is. And it is about 3.45 inches long and about 3.4 inches in blade length. And something I want to bring attention to, well, 2 things on this end of the knife. The heel of the blade here has been brought out far enough that it completely clears the plunge grind. You look down that sharpened edge, and it is consistent all the way across. And that's a beautiful thing. The other thing I want to bring attention to is that hole right there. Round hole, Spyderco trademark, right? Well, Benchmade and Spyderco, from my understanding, have some sort of deal worked out on that hole. So this is a Spidey hole in a Benchmade knife, and that's what I'm going to call it. It's a Spidey hole. And, you know, it is a very nicely done sheep's foot in 154 cm, and Benchmade does what I'm going to call a good job with 154 cm. I have seen better, but Benchmade's is that balance. It's reasonably easy to sharpen. It holds an edge reasonably well for 154 cm. Which, you know, makes it a well-balanced 154 cm. It's not high on the edge retention chart, but it's also not high on the hard to sharpen chart either. You know, I have a couple other knives in 154 cm. One of them holds an edge for a very long time, but it's also a booger to sharpen. And I've seen some that are softer, but this one strikes that balance pretty darn well. And Benchmade is one of the few companies that whenever you get a knife from them, most of the time it comes to you with a pretty darn sharp edge. Now, is it as sharp as it is right now? Well, no, but it will most likely cut phone book paper. And now we'll move along to our pause and read card, and I'll be back with you in just a moment. And now on to our hardware. Benchmade always uses good hardware. The hardware is of enough hardness that it doesn't strip out, and also deep enough in the recessed Torx area that it doesn't normally strip out your Torx bits, which I appreciate a great deal because, guys, if you knew how many T6 Torx bits I go through around here, you would be amazed. You know, taking apart some of the more inexpensive knives, man, they just eat up Torx bits and eat up the little screws. It's a very sad thing. Anyhow, we have a axis lock, and this lock mechanism is a bar that runs all the way across the knife. Whenever we go to open the knife, it springs up and lays on a flat spot on the tang of the blade and provides a very strong lock mechanism. Now, is it the strongest thing in the world? Well, no. Does it exceed my expectations? Yes, because as we've talked about before, my expectation is that the lock will hold the knife open under normal circumstances. You know, if somebody drops a 500-pound weight on me, I don't expect the knife to stay open. If it does, that's wonderful, I didn't get cut. If it doesn't, well, you know, it wasn't designed for that. And as we move on along to ergonomics and action, I want you to get a look at that handle. You know, we talked a minute ago that it's kind of chubby at 0.64, and it is. You know, whenever we talk about thin knives, we're usually talking a ½ inch or less. A lot of them are down there in that 0.4, 4/10 of an inch or so. Not this guy, he's 0.64, kind of thick. Well, we could fuss about that, but it's that thick for a reason. Whenever you add in all of this jimping that we talked about, that's good jimping, not the kind that's going to tear you up, and this jimping up the thumb ramp here, whenever you put this guy in your hand, it locks in nice and tight without tearing your hands up. That extra bit of thickness works in your favor. It makes that knife comfortable in the hand. This is one of those knives that you could work with all day and it wouldn't be a big deal. You know, it's not like, say, my Urban Trapper. This knife is brilliant for everyday carry whenever you need something small and light. It's absolutely brilliant. But it is not the knife I would want if I was having to cut things all day long. No way. If I were having to cut things all day long, it would be a Griptilian, Spyderco Sage, or a Spyderco Mannix. You know, go figure, lots of them have spidey holes in them. Anyhow, the action on this guy is another wonderful thing. Now, whenever you first get it, it may not be great. You can do one or two things. You can flick it a lot, and that was a spidey flick, you know, spidey hole, spidey flick. Hey, well, you know. You may have to flick it a lot, or you can take it apart and polish up those phosphor bronze bushings in there. And I did. I polished up the phosphor bronze bushings for two reasons. One, whenever you first get a Benchmade, most Benchmades have some fairly thick phosphor bronze bushings, and this one's no exception. And whenever you clean up those phosphor bronze bushings and get those raised areas off of them, most of the time the blade centers up very well. So one of the problems out of Benchmade for this year is many of their blades have not been centering up well. Now that seems to be a fix for some of them. And the other thing it does is, of course, it makes the action work better because everything's smoother. And this is where the axis lock comes in. You flick that guy open. Now this one has a year or better's use on it, so you may not be able to do this with all of them, but one thumb, flick it down and it's closed. Whenever you first get one, you can probably spidey flick it, but you may have to use both hands to get it to close. You know, and that's okay. Over time, everything will loosen up a bit and it's all good. And what you end up with, if you do it, if everything works out right, you end up with a knife with no blade play, up, down, or sideways, and an action that is just unbelievable. And I'll show you more of that whenever we get back out to the desk. But anyhow, guys, this has been the Benchmade 550HG. Alright guys, so there is the 550HG. It's a very nice offering from Benchmade. There are going to be some complaints from some people about price, and yeah, I kind of agree. Benchmade could be doing a better job on price for us. You know, we're dealing with 154 cm for a blade steel, glass fill nylon handles, and that selling them at around 90 or 100 bucks is kind of a bit excessive compared to some other brands. However, people are spending the money on them. Benchmade's making a lot of them, so, you know, and I've got 2 of them, so they must be alright. Anyhow, the best thing about the Benchmade Griptilian is this. Once you get it broke in, or you polish up those washers, you get this. And you know, the 940 has great action, but, I mean, come on. I'm just barely moving my hand there. dang near closing itself. And that's all of the Griptilians I have do that, all 3 of them. So, you know, maybe that money is justified. Either way it goes though, guys, the Griptilian is a classic. It is one of those knives that if you have never purchased a knife in the upper echelon of knives, production knives anyhow, you might want to give it a try, especially if you can find a used one somewhere, because, you know, 2 of mine were used. I found them on eBay or other places and got them for way under, and whenever they arrived, there wasn't a darn thing wrong with either one of them, except they were dull. So somebody used them till the factory edge went dull and sold them instead of paying to have them sharpened or learning how to sharpen their knives. And you know, that's fine, I'll take that. Gives me a nice knife at a very good price. Anyhow, guys, Griptilian 550HG, it's a good one. And I really appreciate you stopping by. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.